Just thought I'd do a little how-to on one of these small little four screw pumps. Most of the time these are on a little Kohler engine. There's a few different types. This one here one has an arm. There's also one with no arm that's operated by vacuum. And there's different arm configurations. But I just wanted to show you how relatively easy it is to rebuild one of these if you'd like to take it on yourself. We have a few kits for these, and I'll show you the different ones after we get this one apart. As you can see, the screws are already out of it. Mark the location, the orientation for the inlet and the outlet. Make a mark somewhere, scribe on the body and on this top fuel casting. Remove the 4 screws, separate the 2 halves. Your diaphragm will be down in here, which will look like this. There'll also be a spring underneath here. So in this particular one, you just turn it 90 degrees and lift it up. Underneath on this casting, there's 2 different style valves. We have this style, which uses a 3/4 inch valve, and there is also this style, where you'd remove this screw. This whole casting comes up, and there's a little disc and 2 little springs underneath these. That's basically the 2 different styles. You either have press-in valves, or you have this type of casting that has the little discs. Both of those type of valves come in all of our kits. We'll focus on this particular one. After you get your diaphragm out, clean up this area. If you have a glass beater, then by all means bead blast the thing. To get these valves out, most of the time there's no access to the top of them where you could just knock them out. So we have to do it kind of the crude way. Just get a screwdriver. Note which way these valves go. There's 2 different ways. You want to get a screwdriver in there. Oops. Get your screwdriver in, or any way of prying it. Just pry it off to one side. It'll come out. Same with the other one. You don't have to break the center out of it, but you're just going to pry it out. Down inside, there's a gasket. Most of the time there's a gasket. The other side, oh, it was stuck to the valve. And you can look down inside here, and you can almost guess which way these valves are going to go. If you look at the bottom of this, it's not going to, this diameter here isn't going to fit through that hole. It just won't make it. So it obviously goes that way. The other side has room for it, so it will go in there. Now our valves are a little bit different. The design is different. This is how the valves will go. Your fuel's going to flow in through these 3 little holes and out through the other side. Same with this one here. The fuel will flow in through here and out the other side. So if this valve goes down that way, this one's going to go down that same way. Same thing with the other side. There's room for it to get in there. You just don't want to put it in backwards. These valves press in pretty hard on these aluminum, on the cast aluminum bodies. They press in pretty hard, so if you get one in the wrong way, you're going to destroy it taking it back out. So make sure of which way, be positive of which way it goes before you tap the thing in. The best way to do it on these, I have a tool that I made that fits exactly the right size for it. It fits the valve, plus it's big enough in here that it stays away from the valve plate. Almost positive a deep 9/16 socket, 3/8 drive socket will fit in the same area, and it leaves enough room so that it won't hit the spring or the valve plate. The other side is kind of obvious. It'll just go in. Don't forget to put the gasket down first, then put the valves in. Another thing you want to do is, while this is out and the valves are out of it, is you want to flatten this area. You can either use a flat file. It takes some time, but it'll happen. You get that all nice and flat. Run it on a belt sander, which is what I do, or get a piece of sandpaper, 6x6 or whatever, a big piece of sandpaper. Put it on a piece of glass, or put it on something you know is nice and flat, like the kitchen counter. I didn't tell you to do that. And just keep rubbing it around, and it'll end up flattening it out. Do the same thing with the body. You can either flat file it or run it on a piece of sandpaper. But you want to make sure that these two surfaces are good and flat before you put anything back together. And drop it on the counter. So I'm going to clean up these two parts in the glass beater, and I'll be back in a minute. If you give us a call looking for a rebuild kit, you want to do the job yourself, this is the basic AC4S kit. It's the block gaskets. You can use either one, whichever one you feel you could use. These two gaskets would go in this style casting. If you have the bolt down through the center, like that, you would use these type of valves. If your casting looks like this, and there's a valve pressed into each one of those, use these two valves, those two gaskets. And here's your diaphragm with the most popular pull rod with the notch cut out of the top of it. If you have a vacuum pump that has no arm on it, you get basically the same kit, with the exception of, instead of a diaphragm with a pull rod on it, you get just a blank diaphragm. 4 holes, no hole in the center. There's also another style pull rod, and that looks like this here. It's got a hole in the top. In order to do that type, to replace that type of pull rod, that type of diaphragm, a lot of times you'll have to remove the arm by knocking this pin out and remove the arm, which will have a hook on the end of it, and that's what hooks into this hole right here. And there's also another style, which is a box style pump, and that uses a rather large the body on it, instead of being two pieces like this, it has a space about yay long in there, and it has a cover on the top. 4 screws go down through it, and that again, that would use basically the same setup here, and the diaphragm will be the same, but there's also another piece that would go on top that's similar to that. And they all go together the same way, just the appearance is a little different. Let's get back to the rebuild. Okay, when you removed your old diaphragm, there's a spring right in the center. You're going to reuse that. Sometimes they come in the kit, most of the time not. Now you want to make sure that this surface is flat. The same thing with where the valves sit, or around the casting. Set the spring in there. Get your diaphragm lined up. You want to push it down. And find that slot and turn it 90 degrees. Now it's held in there. Press in your valves, put the gaskets in, put the valves in, tap them down. Make sure that they press in there hard. If they don't, then what I do is I'll take a center punch and go around the edge of the casting and just dent it. Like on this one here. By the time the valve gets pressed in, it's sitting at that height. I don't know which way to turn it here. It's sitting at this height. So you dimple it right in here. Right on this little ledge right here. Same thing with this one. Dimple it there and dimple it there. That'll keep that valve from coming out. One thing to keep in mind when you do these pumps, if you have one that's made out of plastic, usually it's black in color. The body and the fuel casting is black plastic. Our valves just fall right in, and there's no way to keep them in there. You can't dent the plastic. The way out is, if you're handy with JB Weld, put the valve in, mix up some JB Weld, very carefully go around the outside of it, or put some around the outside of this valve here, and smoosh it in there. Put the gasket in first. Put it in and let the thing set. It'll hold. So now you got your valves in. It's ready to go back together. Find your index mark so that you know the inlet and the outlet are in the same position. Tighten down all the 4 screws and you're ready to go. Put your gasket on, put it on the engine, and go mow the lawn. That's about it for these.